Hi, I'm Jennifer. This is Unearthed Relics, and in today's video, I am going to tell a little story about how I managed to sell one of the things that I found at a Goodwill outlet bin with several $100s worth of profit. I am always on the lookout for ways to sell objects that I find. When I go thrifting, I do it because I love to find treasures, some of which are things I want and collect, but many times I see things that are just really interesting objects that aren't necessarily things that fit into the collections that I have, but I don't want them to be discarded, especially when I go to the Goodwill outlet bins. I hate the idea that things, after being out on the floor through a few rotations at the Goodwill outlet bins, seem to be getting thrown into dumpsters in a lot of cases. So I view it as like rescue missions where I'm going and saving things so that they have a chance to find new owners and people who will appreciate them and love them and use them, and again, not be discarded. So I am bad at selling things. I've had a few successful garage sales through the years. I've managed to sell a few things online on a couple different platforms, but it takes a lot of time to do that. Like, it takes time to get things ready, to set everything up, to, manage the communications, to manage the shipping process. And time is the one thing that I'm always in short supply of, in addition to storage space. So that's part of the impetus for trying to get rid of some things as well. But all of that being said, like I recognize the time and effort that goes into being able to keep up on managing online sales. So when I got a flyer a couple of weeks ago that said there was a group coming through doing a local buying event, my interest was piqued. I went through that and kind of debated on it because I assumed, and I think rightfully so, that obviously they're not going to pay top dollar. They're investing a lot of costs to send out a mailer to all households in a given area and travel to different locations. This was a group from Illinois coming here to Indiana and a couple different sites in my part of the state. And so I recognized the inherent cost that had been invested on their part to support an event like this. That being said, I didn't have to figure out where to go, compare prices that were being offered by people locally, or figure out another means of doing so. And all I really had to do was get a bunch of stuff together based on what they said they were looking to buy and take my things in. So I figured it would be, at the very least, a fun adventure, and at most maybe something that ended up being a profitable way to discard one or two items and move those on so that they could have some further purpose or life. I'm here at the Holiday Inn in Bloomington, and I'm going to go ahead and see what it's all about, and then I'll report out afterwards. So what did they say they were looking for? So obviously, coins and watches and jewelry, which I don't have a lot of. I found like a single watch. I don't think it was like a good brand or anything. It kind of was cool. I assumed I would use it in some sort of craft project, like time flies, that kind of thing. And a nicer, older stopwatch. It was marked that it was $78 when it was originally sold. So I figured it was probably like a higher quality stopwatch. It might be of interest to somebody that does that kind of thing. They also said that they were interested in collectibles, so old toys pre-1975. So I grabbed a whole bunch of my different Disney things from different eras and different types of objects. I grabbed my Barbies. I didn't end up taking those in with me. I left those in the car and just showed them a picture. So some of the different Barbie objects that I have and have collected through the years. They also said that they were interested in sports memorabilia, which again, I don't have a ton of, but I do have some things. So I grabbed like the little Babe Ruth kind of commemorative thing, which I'm not assuming is worth a ton, like an old baseball postcard. And this is probably the thing I think is most valuable. It's a Titus playing card or trading card. And they looked at this, they were interested in this. but again told me that I was probably going to get a better price for that by selling it to a specialty collector of that type of object. So no interest on the sports front. It also said vintage purses, so antique beaded, mesh and lucite, or bakelite and old plastic purses. Pulled out a few of the kind of old style beaded purses that I have. Again, things that I found at the Goodwill outlets through the years, as well as some other kind of dress purses, some of which were pretty ornately beaded. I love this one with the flowers on it. I think that was just gorgeous. So I pulled those into the packet of things that I took along with me. And then it also says that they were interested in antiques and art. So things like bronze or pocket knives, lighters, different types of objects from different periods of time. So I pulled together some of the like bronze-like objects. It's like a cane topper that I found I think is really cool. I don't know if all of these are actually bronze, but they're kind of bronzy in color. Little candelabra-y kind of thing. Again, I don't know if they were going for the metal in those things or if they were going for things that had some sort of collector sort of value to them. They also said that they were looking for military and war relics, and I had a few objects that I pulled for that as well. So like a little, I guess it's probably a cigarette case from the Pacific, so I assume that was probably something that somebody had got while stationed there. The Air Force, I don't even know what this is called, altitude computation calculator thing that I had found. This was made in 1935, so it's older and kind of a cool object. Naval training base flag that I had found, and some of the objects that I had gotten from an estate sale a little while back, including an old Army Notre Dame football game program, really cool airplane program from something. This is from, it says 1918, so older, probably post World War I. And then this information about the Aerial League of America. I did get an offer on this stack for about 40 bucks, but I was kind of, from the other information I was getting a sense that they were offering a little less than half of what they perceived the value of something to be. So I went ahead and hung on to those because I want to do a little bit more research and try to figure out what makes these particularly collectible, or what was of interest in that stack. I also took some things, I had some Elvis objects that I brought along. It had mentioned costume jewelry, so I brought some old costume jewelry along with me. Things that I was certain were silver plate I left at home, and I narrowed it down to just a few objects that were obviously silver because they were marked sterling or had different kinds of hallmarks and didn't say plate. Were magnetic in any way that I wanted them to double check. So I stuffed everything down into a giant box and carried it in with me and waited my turn to talk to someone. Okay, so all finished with that, and I had a fun time, a good experience. I went in, found the room, took a number, had to wait for maybe a half hour or so. That was kind of interesting because people were being called up to different stations and kind of telling the stories about the things that they brought. So I got a chance while I was sitting and waiting to kind of listen to the stories that people told about some of the objects that they brought in. I also really got a good feel for the fact that the appraisers seemed to be good people. Like they seemed to be, telling people, honest opinions about the things that they were bringing, letting them know when they would probably be able to get more money for something if they were to sell it online, as opposed to the meltdown rates that they were giving for silver and gold objects and those types of things. They also were, kind of good about, things that might have had sentimental value and, talking through, the pros and cons of letting something go in that fashion. So it seemed like very positive. Like, I mean, it felt like a really positive thing. They were also really knowledgeable about stuff. There was kind of like a antiques roadshow sort of vibe where they could, you know, tell you a little bit about the object and not only what its worth was, but maybe a little bit about it, what time period it was from, what it was made from, those kinds of things. So it was really interesting just being a part of the audience or kind of an observer of that process. So I had fun kind of explaining where I had found the objects I already had known from listening to a few people as they were kind of talking to the different folks who were appraising things. That they wanted to know kind of the origin of the object or the story. I think probably in part to, first off, maybe verify that you own it and it's yours and that there's, you know, some normal seeming backstory to how you acquired it. Obviously, I had a very interesting story with my bowl because I found it along with, you know, the other spoon and other things that I found over the years at the Goodwill outlet bins. I found it at the Goodwill outlet back in 2022. It was kind of an afterthought, like I was kind of going around. It was a bin that had been out for a while, so probably pretty close to being pulled away and discarded potentially. And I saw this bowl and I'd been seeing some different decor ideas where people were using silver bowls or old trophies in decoration, and I thought, oh, I could use that. So I grabbed it. It was pretty light, so it wasn't, you know, I really wasn't even thinking that it might be real silver at that point. It just looked like a cool bowl. It actually was a award, it looked like, for a medical salesperson from the, I think it was 50s or 60s. And so I thought that was kind of cool too. There was like a little bit of a historical sort of story or meaning to that, and grabbed it. And it wasn't until I got home that I made the realization that it was marked sterling, and obviously weighed it and got a sense of its value. And it was always the intention to sell it. Like, I never had really meant to keep it. I have other things that I've used in those kind of decoration kinds of things. But I had held on to it for a really long time, and I had made no progress of getting it to a pawn shop or a jeweler or someone else who buys gold or silver. So again, it seemed like the right time, and I was ready to let it move on and do more than just sit on a shelf in my closet. After looking through everything, kind of unceremoniously digging through the box, pulling out a few things that were of interest, they made an offer on the silver, and the initial offer was $400, and I told them that I would think on that a little bit. I asked if they were able to do any better on the silver objects, and they came up to $500, which was kind of what I had set as my personal goal based on the research that I had done about the current rate of silver and factoring in the costs that they were probably going to have in terms of running the event, promoting it, hosting it, and all of that, knowing that they needed to make a profit on the effort as well. And $500 was I wanted to get, and that's what I got. So I was really excited about that. I knew that the bowl was just about a pound, and another spoon that I had found was a little over a half a pound, and all the rest of the things were maybe another couple ounces that I had put together. So all told, it was probably less than 2 pounds worth of silver. But obviously $500 for some things collectively that I paid probably no more than $5 for felt like a pretty good return on my investment. So if you paid attention to the title of today's video, it said that I made $1,000 on something that I had paid $5 for. And I want to provide a little bit more clarity about that now. The reason that I can say that I made $1,000 from that $5 investment is because my company offers matching for donations at the end of each year for up to $500. So the $500 that I made by selling these objects, I was able to provide funding to a couple different charities and then turn those donation receipts into my company to get them to pay out an additional $500 in matching. So All told, for my investment of $5, I was able to get $1,000 that I was able to share with a few different charities. So that is my great tale of the bowl that I bought and almost didn't buy when out thrifting one day, and some of the other objects that I found along the way, in large part because I started looking for silver more because of having found that bowl and a couple other pieces of things that looked to be real silver, and because I started carrying a magnet with me when I went to the Goodwill. And I am really excited about how this all turned out. Yeah, I had in my mind kind of like, this is like a $500 fine, and lo and behold, I walked away with a check for $500. So I'm really excited about that, and I think it was a good day ultimately, and had a lot of fun. I think that they were offering good prices, and it was a fun experience. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and happy Thanksgiving.